Welcome. You're listening to RTO 94.6 FM. I'm Rent Gorder with the Island Life Show, and in the studio here with me, I've got Gael Johnson, the community social worker, here today. Hello, Gael.
Hello, everyone out there on 94.6.
Now, I've wanted Gael to kind of come in today because tomorrow in the new issue of the Barrier Bulletin, I've put an article in just writing a little bit about some reports and statistics that have recently appeared that paint not such a rosy picture of life on the island for a few people here. And I just wanted Gael to talk about that as being on the coalface here with helping people cope with their situation. So, Gael, can you please start off just by introducing yourself and what your role here is at on the island?
Yeah, okay, thanks, Rent. The community worker position, or the community worker project, was inaugurated about 20 odd years ago under the auspices of the Great Barrier Island Community Health Trust. I'm not a social worker, I'm a community worker. And the Great Barrier Island Health Trust, at the behest of the local people, found that the rural nurses were doing a lot of work that wasn't nursing work, that they were assisting people in other areas that needed someone to take over that role. This has been a very long project, and we've been funded largely in the past by Auckland City, now Auckland Council, and by the Ministry of Social Development, which used to be the Department of Social Welfare, and also by lotteries, and we thank our funders. The role of community worker is what I would call a general dog's body role. It covers a lot of different areas. I guess the best thing to say is if you can't figure it out and you're confused about paperwork issues, financial problems, it's always a good idea to share, and I'm available basically 40 hours a week at the health centre in Claris.
Now, Gael, that being available 5 days a week there must mean there's quite a few people that kind of come in and see you. And I remember one time you said to me a long time ago, but you said that you see your role as not just receiving people, but standing alongside them and saying, okay, look, how can we tackle your problem now? And seeing it from the perspective of people that come into you. Can you give us some examples of what kind of things you actually end up doing for people that come and ask for your help?
Yeah, Ren, I think that because the role is necessarily diverse, basically because Great Barrier Island is not serviced by any of what used to be called, or still may be called, heartland services, and that is all the links to government organisations, for example, Inland Revenue, Justice, Corrections, ACC, any number of government or semi-government organisations which might be accessible on the mainland is not readily accessible for residents here, and often nor is the computer linkages or the paperwork can be fairly difficult to decipher, and realistically to a certain extent I've learnt the role as I've gone along, and I've been in the role since early in 2005, but quite often a problem can be a problem for both me and the person, and so if we use both of our heads, two heads better than one, we can start to unravel it, and it's often just about ringing up or emailing someone and starting the ball rolling and saying, how do we look at this, how do we get into this, and I have a huge amount of resources that I've built up over this time. So that I've got contacts and sort of confidence, I guess, in terms of contacting people. I guess one of my most successful interventions, if you like, has been in the area of corrections, and it's not as though there's a lot of people that are that are given court sentences for community services out here. We're by and large a really good bunch of people. People that do go through the courts and end up with community service hours over here. Generally, it's been fairly minor offences. And several years ago, it was discovered that actually Corrections Department were telling people that they couldn't do community service on Great Barrier Island because there was no provision for that. And when I got in contact with the Corrections Department, the initial response was rather as if we were some hokey island off there in the middle of nowhere with no sort of normal New Zealand style services. So getting those people to come over and connecting them with potential sponsors for community services like schools and clubs and other not-for-profit organisations on the island was really positive, and that has worked well for us. So that's just one minor example of somebody coming to me and saying, look, I'm a family man, I've got work here, I've got a home here, but corrections are telling me that I have to go to Auckland to do my 40 hours of service, and that was clearly ridiculous. And I guess that's a lot of times what happens out here, Rent, is that what is easy on the mainland is just a little more tricky out here, and I guess that leads us into the whole problem that we've sort of uncovered, I guess, or been aware of, but perhaps not been so focused on, is that government policies in general quite often ignore specific circumstances. They're directed at the norm and not those situations where we're out of the loop. Another example, which we haven't been successful so far, but we're still battling, is the payment of boarding allowance from the Ministry of Education for our kids that need to go off island to school. And several years ago that was set at an amount of around about $3,100 per annum per child, and that is clearly so far out of date now as to be of very little financial help for people, particularly with 2 or 3 kids at school. And that is an ongoing area of dialogue with the Ministry of Education and politicians and what have you, to say, in terms of budget, this is a pimple, but in terms of difficulties for the island, it's a mountain. So yeah, just generally there's the lobbying aspect of the job as well as the individual contacts on a daily basis to help out in crisis or in general.
Now, was that something that this advocacy role that you sort of playing there, beyond just individuals, just on behalf of the island community as a whole, was that something that was really expected when the job first started? And is that something that developed just out of the context you have, or is that somewhere built into the structure of the
It
job?
is actually built into the job description. I didn't, part of the job description is to advocate for the people of Great Barrier Island. In fact, that's the major part of the job description, in my opinion. And that means that the people of this island come first and foremost. And so in terms of any kind of liaison, I stand from the island perspective and look out together with the person, with the client, with the patient, and say, where can we go to solve this? So advocacy was definitely built into the job description, and also built into the job description is particularly the liaison role between residents and central government off island, but also local government off island, in terms of that interface between the folk here who can't access that and who do we go to, how do we make this work. So no, it's definitely a part of the role. I do have a background in advocacy. I worked for about 10 years, and particularly in benefit advocacy in Auckland, and so I see that as one of my strengths, I guess, is that I don't have I don't feel that I have to know what I'm doing before I go out there and start asking questions. I feel like asking questions is the way to begin to unpack a situation. So I think that advocacy is basically you think, okay, maybe this is something for the Children's Commissioner, maybe they can point me in the right direction. So I get on the phone and I ring up the Children's Commissioner and I say, how does this work? How does this work between child, youth and family and an individual? And that sort of thing. So I don't always know the answers, but I'm fairly determined to find them.
Now I'm speaking here to Gail Johnson, our community worker, a little bit about her role here. And we're just going to take a short break because afterwards I want to ask some more questions about the state of the community here, as we know it from both your experience and the statistics that are available. So we'll just take one break and then kind of come back.